All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Muhammad Usman Jazz. Everybody knows me as Jazz, and you may have seen some of my tweets on Twitter. My handle is at MUAJazz, and what I do is I'm actually just a fan. I'm not a reporter. I'm not an analyst. I just follow conference realignment just for fun. And yesterday, I made a post about the Pac-12 TV deal. So I wanted to make this video for a couple of reasons. One, I want to show people how to use a spreadsheet I made that is available on my Twitter. I'll also link it in the comments here on YouTube. And more importantly, some of the implications of what's going on, as well as the limitations of the spreadsheet that I made. So real quick, let's get into the spreadsheet. Let me share that screen real quick. All right, so right here, this is the spreadsheet that I made. Here's the introduction. It'll tell you what you need to know. Why can I not zoom in? Hmm. Yeah, that should be better. Actually, we'll go up to 200. Yeah, sure, why not? Right. So first things first, what you need to do is you need to save a copy. So on the sheet that you see, you will not be able to edit anything or play around with it until first you do file, make a copy, and save it to your own Google Drive. And what that will do is you'll have your own copy of the spreadsheet, and you'll be freely able to edit it in any way that you want. Okay, so here's some of the intro things. Right. Let's get into the elephant in the room. So when I made that initial tweet, right, I said that the price for the Pac-12 network add-on for Apple TV would be $20 a subscription. Truth be told, I didn't actually think, this whole thing would be taken that seriously. That part is the one part that, I had a feeling that it's not real, and I just kind of rolled with it just because I just felt like being a troll there. But the real number will probably be closer to $8. Now the $20 number, I did see it online, and truthfully, I did feel like it wasn't correct, but I did roll with it. That number was probably derived from the fact that the ACC network offers their package for $15 on cable and whatnot, and if you were to think how Apple thinks, add a 30% tax to it, you get to $20. Now, obviously, that's not the real number, and I do apologize. That is a mea culpa there. So, if there's one thing I wish I could do on that tweet, it's to edit and change it, but I don't want to pay for Twitter Blue to be able to edit my tweets. So, it's not happening. Mea culpa. Let me get that out of the way. All right. Some of the assumptions that we're making here. I made these assumptions based on this tweet right here. Let me share that to you now. This one right here. So MH version 3, he is probably one of my favorite sources for all this stuff. People will always try to discredit him, but he's always been spot on. And although some of the news he may give may not be accurate in the end, at the time, I do believe whatever's happening, he will give you the truth in that moment. And obviously, things are shifting, things are changing, lots of speculation going around, but he's been spot on from what I can tell from here on out. While I said speculation, let me be 100% clear. I am not an analyst. I am not a reporter. I am not connected to anybody. What I have done with the spreadsheet is simply taken the speculation I see online on Twitter, and I put it in a spreadsheet just to make it a bit easier to visualize. So if any of you are saying that, I'm not a source, you are absolutely right. If you're saying I don't know what I'm talking about, you're also probably right. I really do not know what I am talking about. What I do know is that for the sake of speculation and seeing what the possibilities could be, that I can do something here that's worthwhile. So let's look at the deal real quick. It'll be $20 million per school for 12 schools. Apple will take over Pac-12 network absorbing production costs, give a one-time payment of $7 million to cover the Comcast debt and whatever else. The PAC N will become a subscription add-on to Apple TV, and additional payouts will trigger to the conference when certain tiers of subscribers are met. $1 per sub per quarter, and tiers are 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, etc. Now, there are other tweets out there that are saying $1 per sub per month paid out every quarter. There are other tweets out there that are saying the tiers here are not, 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. Rather, they'll start at like 500,000, then a million, and then somewhere in between a million and five. There might be two or three, on and on and on. But reality is we don't know what the deal is. We are ultimately speculating. So this is the assumption I'm going to use here. Because of that, that's why you will see the sheet that I'm presenting. Let me share that real quick. Yeah, this sheet right here, right? All we're saying here is what we do know is a $250 million base amount. That number is 20 million times 12, and then 10 million just to make it easy to round. That's what we're assuming. Subscriber bonus of $1 per subscriber, either monthly or quarterly. That tweet said quarterly, other tweets say monthly. So in the spreadsheet, what I've done here is you can actually change it right here. If you want to do monthly, you just type in M. If you want to do quarterly, just type in Q. And what that will do is it'll change everything throughout the sheet. So right here, if we did monthly, this is what we would be. Oops, sorry, not that one. Right, monthly, the subscriptions here would be multiplied by 3. And if you go back and do quarterly, it would just be the 1 million subscribers times $1. Okay, so let's get back to this sheet. All right. So yeah, I wasn't sure if it was monthly or quarterly, but I put that option in there. One assumption on this sheet is that we have to make is that the payouts here do not include tier 2 rights, do not include tier 3 rights, and they do not include I lost my train of thought. This is what I get for waking up at 7 a.m. and I normally don't wake up till like 10. All right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's no tier 2 rights. There are no tier 3 rights. There's no NCAA tournament payments. The big dance, the college football playoffs, none of that. And the reason for that is that we don't know how schools will perform. Yesterday, I actually saw a post I made on Facebook a year ago where University of Houston, UNC, Villanova were the top 3 schools for college basketball, right? And SDSU and UConn were in the 4th tier, where they said this would be the teams that round out the top 25. The 2nd tier were like blue bloods and new bloods. 3rd tier were dark horses. 4th tier is like, all right, these are just on the fringes. We'll see how that goes. But it turns out they were the ones who went to the finals of the NCAA tournament, and therefore it's very hard to predict, where teams will end up in terms of payout in the tournament. So we can't touch that. Tier 2 and tier 3 rights, they're all over the place. So we're strictly focusing on the tier 1 rights here. In this case, it would be the Pac-12 getting the rights to Apple TV, and Apple TV will then sub-license out to ESPN. Now, I was going to talk about this a bit later, but let me just go over it briefly. That is a very smart move on part of both Apple and ESPN, because what it does, it shows the Pac-12 that, one, you will be on linear cable in some capacity. They're saying 50%. ESPN will sub-license that out. But what it also does, it gives the Pac-12 some confidence that that ESPN isn't strictly in the business of trying to destroy the Pac-12. So this way, ESPN will have Pac-12 inventory, even though they don't have the Pac-12 deal. ESPN will have the Big 12 inventory, and even though the Big 12 is trying to poach schools from the Pac-12, at least ESPN is showing some neutrality here. Okay, now that that's out of the way, the base pay amount here is $250 million, right? What we don't know is if that number will change with more defections. Now, in my analysis here, I have 250 million across all of the options that we could have, but realistically in this specific option here, the 606N, 6 original and 6 new bloods, I don't think that would be a $250 million base. I think at most Apple would be okay with Arizona leaving. I don't believe they would give the full 250 million to the Pac-12 if Oregon and Washington left. But if they did, then that is a great deal, actually. And we can jump into that shortly. The sheets here, I do have them labeled. There's a base only, which is only the base 250 million amount split over however many schools. The unequal revenue sharing, there are 3 tabs for this. And then those 3 tabs are each labeled, based on how many original schools there are, how many new schools there are. I did start working on a growth sheet, but I haven't been able to get around to finishing it yet. There is some complication to it, and we'll jump into that in a bit. So, okay, how do you use a sheet? Simple. Right here, you can enter the base pay amount. I haven't highlighted this one because I don't know if the base amount can change. But if it does, you can change this value. I mean, I guess I should just make it yellow. And even the real thing, I'll make it yellow. So that will carry all the way through. Here you can decide if you want monthly or quarterly payments based on the subscriber incentive. And this is the price right here you can put in to show Apple subscription price for the consumer. So for example, in my tweet, I said $20. Realistically, we could be $8. Apple might even do something where you start off at like $6, and a year later it's $8, and then $12, on and on and on. I think that would actually be very smart for them, just to lure people in initially, and then over the long term they make more revenue. Now, why is that important? It's because in any of the scenarios that we have, now let's go look at the ERS sheet real quick, right? Because this one actually has the Apple info. If they had 1 million subscribers, right? Apple's gross profit would be negative. They would be on the hook if they have an $8 subscription pass. They would lose $158 million based on the assumptions that we have here, right? There's 250 base amount they have to pay. There's the sub incentive they have to pay for 1 million subscribers. In this case, I did combine the quarters into a year just to make it easier. So for the year, they pay, 254 million, right? But if they're only bringing in 96 million from subscriptions, they're out 158 million dollars. And so it's not in Apple's interest to do this for just 1 million subscribers. Now, initially, growing to 1 million subscribers could be a problem, or anywhere beyond 1 million. So I see how this could be a good business opportunity for them. But in the long run, if they're going to make money, I do believe they will increase the price over time. And even if they don't, right, they would need at least 3 million to break even, 5 million to make profit. 5 million is a good number, but it's not a good number for the Pac-12 because I do not believe any of the schools would be happy with a simple payout of around $22.5 million. Now, the ERS sheet here, this is equal revenue sharing for all the schools, all 12 schools that will be in the Pac-12. That's not what was reported, actually. There are reports that there will be unequal revenue sharing where incoming schools would get half a share and it would scale up each year. And so when you look at the unequal revenue share, the possibilities here, right? We have 3 sheets of possibilities where you have 9 of the original schools in which Arizona doesn't leave, very unlikely. We have the 8 original schools where Arizona does leave. This is the one I'll be using the most to talk about everything. And then there is the one where Oregon and Washington also leave. I'm truly 50-50 on this one. It can go either way, so I've included it just in case. But all right, let's get back to the equal revenue share sheet. For Apple to be happy, they need about 5 million subscribers, right? But if what that tweet said is true, that Apple will give an incentive bonus of per sub per quarter. The Pac-12 would need 32,600,000 subscribers just to get to the Big 12 number in terms of the tier 1 rights. This doesn't include any tournament winnings. This doesn't include any of that. This is just strictly the base pay and the incentives. So currently, Apple has about 40 million subscribers for Apple TV. There's no way that 80% of them would sign up for the Pac-12 network. That's just not happening. I would want to say maybe, I can see them getting maybe 5 million, at most 10 million, but 32 million is too big of a number with this incentive structure. So, I am getting into my personal bias there. Maybe it is something that the Pac-12 hopes to achieve. Maybe they can do it. More power to them. My personal opinion, I don't think they can get to 30 million in the first few years, and that's just all there is to say about it. Okay. On the unequal revenue sharing screens, what this does is, again, we have the number of subscribers, $1 per subscriber per quarter, yearly payout, and the base pay, right? We do it for 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30, 40, on and on. So the situation is very similar here. From Apple's perspective, it doesn't matter what the revenue is split as. What matters is that they have a certain obligation to the Pac-12 to pay based on the number of subscribers and a base amount. So the 3 million number here that we were talking about earlier in the unequal revenue share screen, if Apple were to reach that amount, they would break even. 5 million is where they're happy. Anything beyond that, it's profit for them. That's great. Now, what this sheet does here is that we have 12 schools here, right? But on the first sheet, the 903N, 9 original, 3 new. So the last 3 schools have a partial share of half of the original share amount. So what this means is that the 3 new schools will each get half a share, and the 9 original schools will get a full share for a total of 10.5 shares. And that's the number we use to divide the revenue amount up here. So that's what you would expect a school to get if they were one of the original 9. I should be using this sheet here with the 8-0. Right, we're expecting 25 million if Arizona does leave per school, if they bring in 4 additional schools into the Pac-12 and Apple doesn't decrease the base payment amount. All this is contingent on Apple not changing that base payment amount. So any assumption here, I did leave the option for anyone to change it, but it is possible. Okay, now what you'll notice here is that years 1 through 6, each school ends up making less money. And the reason for that is that by the end of year 6, right, the new schools coming in will have a full share, right? We're doing a sliding scale here year over year. They get a bonus, 10% of a share. And so by year 6, everyone's equal. Everyone's making the same amount of money. And you'll see on the bottom line here that all of these are equal to the exact same number, and they total the same amount per year. Now, the reason for this is that at a 1 million subscribers, right, we are assuming no subscriber growth here. It is just flat. If that was the case, yes, the old schools who are currently in the Pac-12, they will lose money over time with this deal if there's no subscriber growth whatsoever. The new schools, however, their numbers actually increase over time. And that makes sense, right? Like if eventually everyone's going to be even, their payouts year over year will increase. So if you look at the numbers here in year 1 for 1 million subscribers, it's 25.4 million. That's not bad. If they get to 5 million, Oregon, Washington, Arizona State, Utah, Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, they would make $27 million a year. Now, if they want to get something close to the Big 12, With the unequal revenue share, they would have to get something close to 20 million subscribers on Apple TV per quarter. Um, yeah, I don't think that's possible personally. 20 million, yeah, you could try and convince everybody in California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado. I mean, yeah, on and on, right? You can try and convince as many people as you want to pay an additional $8 a month, but I just do not have faith that that many people would subscribe. And here's something I want to show you. It's a tweet that, or a set of tweets that I have here. And what this is I just quickly searched, would you subscribe to a streaming service to watch the Pac-12? Right. Um, 85.7% here saying no. Would you be willing to subscribe to Amazon Prime to watch the Pac-12 and Thursday night NFL games? A lot of people say they already have Prime, which is, Amazon would make a good partner here, but unfortunately, they're not the ones with the deal. I think Amazon pulled out. And this last one right here, 104.5 ESPN, which is saying is, would you subscribe to Apple TV to watch the Pac-12 football? 90% of people said no. So I do not know if that's possible to get to 30 million for that number. Now, let's head back to the other sheet here. All right. So back here, right? The question now is, why would a school choose to take this deal if they're making less money over time and other schools are making more money over time? Well, this is where Apple's growth play comes in, right? So the more subscribers you get over time, the more Apple will pay out. The tiers were what, 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, and then plus 10 million, on and on. What I did on this sheet, now this sheet I haven't published yet simply because it's not perfect by any means. This one's more complicated. I'll get into the math about that real soon. But what I've done on this sheet real quick, and let me zoom out, is that every year we have about a 5% growth across the different subscription tiers, right? So let's say start off with 1 million subscribers, and then over time, every year they gain 5%. So by the end of year 6, on the unequal revenue share, 8 original, 4 new schools, right? You start off with the same 25.4 million, but every year the amount of money you make does go up. Now, 5% is my conservative estimate for growth here. If they do something closer to 10%, even better. But I'm going to go with 5% just to keep my numbers consistent. If they had 5 million subscribers with 5% growth year over year, you would end up with a share of 28 million. If you end up with 5% growth on top of the original 20 million year over year, right? So this is the initial number, 20 million. Then you do 5% of that, then 5% of the middle number here, then 5% of year 2, then 5% of year 3. This number ends up being actually a lot bigger over time. Let me see if I can just do a sum real quick what that is equal to. Yes, that ends up being quite a bit higher. I'm not going to do the math in my head. It'd just be disingenuous. I really can't just do it right now. I'm not awake. But what that is that this shows that the incentive structure they're giving can work. Now, the problem is can doesn't mean that it will. And so I don't see how this is a good deal for all the schools involved. Um, if they can somehow get 10 million shares to start off, I think then over time it becomes palatable. And with the unequal revenue sharing and the NCAA and the tier 2 and tier 3 rights, you do end up getting something close to the Big 12. But if you're going to start off at 1 million subscribers, or, in this case, 0 subscribers, right? You want to get to 1 million subscribers before the Pac-12 network on Apple TV launches. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow for most people. If you go back to base only and look at the numbers here, the 8 original, 4 neutrals, right? They're getting 25 million a year base. If the 9 originals stay, it's 23 million. And this one's always interesting, right? When I first made the sheet, I was actually kind of surprised by this. And that is that if more schools leave, each school ends up making more money. Yeah. So this is assuming the 250 million base pay stays the same. Um, right. So if that was the case, if 6 schools left, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Oregon, Washington, and they backfilled with, God knows what other schools they listed on here: SDSU, SMU, UNLV, Boise, Colorado, Rice, Tulane, Memphis, any of those schools, right? If they were to backfill, all those new schools would get a initial share in the first year of 13.88 million, 13.9 million, right? And the original 6 schools that are left would get about 28 million. And that's actually something palatable. So this deal is structured in a way where it rewards schools for staying. And interestingly, the more schools that leave and the more schools that join, it benefits the other schools as well. So, for example, in the 9 original, 3 new schools table here, the new schools would make 11 million a year in year 1, right? But if instead of 3 new schools, you had 4 new schools, each of those 4 new schools would make 12.5 million. And if you go to 6 new schools, each school would make 13.88 million. Same with the original schools. If the original 9 schools were still there, you have 23.8 million. If Arizona leaves, you have 25 million. If Oregon, Washington, and Arizona leave, then you end up with an even bigger amount. It's 27.7 million. So it's in their interest to stay, assuming the base number stays the same. Now, one limitation I do want to mention about this sheet is that Apple is paying in brackets or buckets every quarter. It's not linear like my little sheet here is showing, right? This would be a linear, like a line on a graph. And here, let me real quick draw it on Paint. Right. So you have a base revenue here of 25 million. And then, as subscribers grow, your revenue goes higher. Now, the issue with Apple and their deal here is that they're not paying on the linearity of how many subscribers you have. No, they're paying based on tiers that you reach with the number of subscribers. So at 25 million, right? You have $25 million of base pay, you have 0 subscribers. You won't get any additional money until you get to this point, the 1 million subscriber mark. Right? The next tier, you wouldn't get any additional money until you got to 5 million. And of course, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, on and on and on. Now, this is actually a good thing for Apple, but bad for the PAC-12, because the value in these triangles that are created is value that Apple gets to pocket, and the PAC-12 doesn't see a cent of it until they reach the next tier. So this deal, although it's bad for Apple up front, there are ways they can compensate for the initial loss over time. For the PAC-12, however, that means they don't get all the money for the subscribers. Rather, they only get money for the subscribers when they reach a certain milestone on their tiers. I don't think the Pac-12 presidents would be okay with this. I think it would be better if they did a linear model here, but I don't think that's happening. I think the issue here for Apple was that they're losing so much money up front that they want a more tiered structure like this just to make up for the shortfall. On the analysis earlier, the sweet spot was around 3 million for Apple. That's for them to break even. the reality is it's a hair more. And so what that does is, let me see if I can zoom in here. What Apple would do is that between 3 million and whatever other amount there is. Oopsie. Right? They would use these little bits of the initial tier to offset that cost. And then the yellow bits here are profit that Apple makes without having to pay the PAC-12. And that would happen at every tier. But that is another reason why this incentive structure is not, in my opinion, not a great deal for the PAC-12. So bottom line, is this a good deal? The answer is maybe. But there are too many variables there. And in fact, I just thought of another variable I didn't mention on the spreadsheet. Let me real quick move back over to the spreadsheet and show you what I mean. So on this spreadsheet, right, we have schools that have partial revenue, partial shares, and we have full shares, right? What this spreadsheet doesn't take into account is that in the first few years, there will be buyouts. As of right now, San Diego State's buyout is what, 34 million? I mean, I think that goes for anybody in the Mountain West Conference. The AAC, if you're looking at, Tulane, Rice, Memphis, their buyout is 10 million if you give them 27 months notice, so obviously significantly higher. And with the $70 million that Apple is giving the Pac-12 network up front, 50 million is going to go to Comcast. So you have 20 million to play with for buyouts. And that buyout amount, well, the difference between all the buyouts and the 20 million will then be divided over all the schools that are getting a partial share over so many years. So this number could actually be a lot less. I wouldn't be surprised if they do 2.5 million a year per school until the difference is met up. For a school like, actually, no, it'd be even more than that for a school like anybody in the Mountain West has 34 million, because 34 million divided by 6, right? Just 6 years here is like 5 and some change. So let's just say, 5.5 million would be gone. That puts them revenue neutral with I know with the AAC, their payout 7 million. I don't know what the Mountain West payout is, but at the AAC, like let's look at SMU, for example, right? Let's say, I don't think their buyout's going to be 34 million, but if it was, right, they would have to divide a $34 million buyout over 6 years, 5.5, right? So at 12.7 million, you take 5.5 out, you are right there at the AAC payout of 7 million, and you're going into a conference where you're not sure if the conference will even survive. So I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I will go full bias here. I don't believe this is a great deal. I believe it's a deal. It could help the Pac-12 survive. I don't think schools are very excited about it. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about more defections soon. For the schools that are in the group of 5, yes, it gives you an opportunity to have an automatic path to the playoffs. But if Oregon and Washington are staying, good luck. I mean, yeah, it's just a really not bad deal. It's a fair deal for what Apple's offering. It's just not the deal that the schools are looking for, unfortunately. And that's just a case of reality, is that everybody believes, or all the presidents at the Pac-12 universities believe they're worth more. This is the offer that you have. For any incoming school, if the buyout is, let's say, half of what I was saying with the AAC, right? Let's say SMU gets the deal that they gave Houston, Cincy, and UCF, 17 million, and they get to go. Well, then it becomes more manageable, and it is then revenue positive for the incoming schools. For the Mountain West, I don't know if that's possible, simply because buyout doubled on July 31st. So that's really all there is to say about that. Yeah, bottom line, it's a fair deal, in my opinion. I don't think it's a good deal. I don't think the Pac 12 should take this deal unless they have no other options. I really think they should negotiate the tiers here. The 1 million, the 5 million, 10 million into smaller subdivisions. I think that can do wonders for them in terms of growth over time. I believe they need like an 8% growth rate year over year to break even. And that's really it, guys. Yeah, that's my analysis on this deal. If you have any other thoughts, questions, I'm always free to talk. I'm on Twitter. My handle's at MUAJazz. I'm currently using my podcast as streaming software. My podcast is called Salam Nerds. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to, listen to me and my buddy Neebs talk about reality TV, talk about nerd culture, talk about movies and theaters. We love growing an audience. I am from the University of Houston, both of my degrees up there. Graduated from the Bauer College of Business. Had to throw a shout out there from my school and my day job, my work at Space City Labs. If you know any doctors who are looking to switch from LabCorp or Quest, do let me know. I would really appreciate that. The more business I can make, the more time I can be doing analysis like this and having a lot more fun, in my opinion. But yeah, if you want to see more of this, please help a brother out. If not, I do appreciate the like, comment, share, subscribe. Podcast is doing well. If you're interested in that stuff, please come by. And again, if you have any more questions, anything else you want to know, if you want to help me modify the sheet, just please tweet at me. It's at MUAJazz. And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. And Big 12, yeah, we're in a good place. Pac-12, good luck. Take care and good morning.